Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hour 2, Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, not from inside the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, but right here on Radio Row for Super Bowl 59. We are here all week off the bench, Hunt Palmer Show, as well as After Further Review. We're talking some Super Bowl, some LSU basketball, some LSU football, some LSU baseball, and kind of sprinkle it all in. Curt Schilling, former MLB pitcher, one of the all-time greats, going to be with us 30 minutes from right now. He's here on behalf of the World War II Museum. I've got some questions that I want to ask to Curt Schilling. He's obviously the bloody sock game comes to mind there for the Boston Red Sox in 2004. Broke that curse as part of a great team that made history. I want to talk about the 01 World Series where he and Randy Johnson were co-MVPs, and I played in New York just months after 9/11. Just a crazy, crazy time there. That had to be quite a scene. And I'm also curious to talk to Curt Schilling about what he thinks about the current state of pitching, where pitchers are lifted in the third inning or never allowed to go through the order a third time, where guys are just chasing velocity, injuries are up, and it just feels like the pitching is better than it's ever been as far as velocity and spin rate and all those kind of things, and I think it's as difficult to hit as it's ever been, in my opinion. But you don't see guys that manipulate the baseball like Pedro Martinez did, like Curt Schilling did, like Greg Maddux did in that time. And I kind of want to get his thoughts on all of that a little bit later on in this hour. We're going to chat with the Chiefs. We're going to talk to Darren Smith here very, very shortly. Before we catch up with him and talk about this Super Bowl that's coming up on Sunday, I want to take some time to talk a little LSU baseball. All week long, I've been into last week, been previewing each position day by day, and we have done the outfield, left field, and center field yesterday. Got to finish that off in right field. And that is where, to me, the biggest question marks lie. And I phrase it as a question mark, not a hole in the lineup or a big concern, because I'm just not sure how it's going to shake out. But you've got a number of names, in my opinion, that can fill that slot in right field. And it may be a deal where somebody wins that job. It may be a deal where you play a number of guys depending on matchups, depending on the ballpark you're in, depending on the wind location, depending on the pitcher that you've got, depending on the bullpen arms that are left and who you might want off the bench. There are a lot of different aspects at play here. You all know that I've kind of said I think Derek Curiel is in left field. I kind of think that Chris Stanfield is in center field. That could change, but that's what I feel right now. So right field becomes this hodgepodge, and it's Ethan Fry, I think, on the low end. It's Dalton Beck, I think, on the low end. And then you start, to me, to get to some of the guys that I think will be the likely starters there with Ashton Larson, Josh Pearson, and Jake Brown. Now, Josh Pearson is the proven commodity. If you give Josh Pearson 55 games worth of offensive at-bats, he's going to hit 265, 270. He's going to hit 9 or 11 home runs, going to strike out a little bit, and he's going to play good defense when he's out there in the outfield. That's who Josh Pearson's been for 2 years now, and that's who he's been for 3 years now, really, and that's who he's going to be. Ashton Larson had a phenomenal freshman season. You realize that Ashton Larson led LSU in hitting during conference play last year. He hit .337 against the SEC, not including midweek games, not including games in February. Ashton Larson hit .337 against the Southeastern Conference. Then he went to Cape Cod, and he was the most outstanding player for the Chatham Anglers, the team that he played for. He hit .318 and .316, I guess, in a really, really tough league to hit in. And so you figure that's a guy whose bat-to-ball skills are phenomenal. He doesn't profile as a big power guy. He doesn't run great, and he's not a great defender, and he has an average arm. But he has a really flat swing that stays in the zone for a long time, and he makes a lot of contact and hits a lot of line drives. So that's a guy that you feel like has a pretty high floor. I don't know if the ceiling's all that high with Ashton Larson. Maybe he does grow into 18 home run power. I'd love to see that. I don't project that right now. I think he's a guy that you know what you get, left-handed bat, average speed, average arm, average defender, a lot of line drives. That's a good thing. Then you look at Jake Brown. Jake Brown's the best athlete of this group. He runs really well. He's got a great arm. He's got the opportunity, I think, to hit for a little bit more power than he did as a freshman. But he's still learning to be an everyday offensive and defensive player and not a pitcher. And he's not the most polished guy in this group. So there's a lot of variability there. And the one thing that I think hinders those three, they're all left-handed. So you don't have that differentiator. You don't automatically go, well, there's a guy that's right-handed, boom, on the mound, this is your guy. Usually that's the way it shakes out because there's just more right-handed hitters than there are left-handed hitters. They're all the same. Dalton Beck's left-handed too. So there's not that huge differentiator. I think it just kind of depends on what Jay Johnson values. My guess, and this is a complete guess, is that he would go with Josh Pearson in the first game, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he went with Jake Brown in the first game. I'd be a little surprised if it was Larson. I don't feel like Larson's knocking down that door, but I would also be surprised if Ashton Larson didn't play a good bit this year. I don't think right now I can forecast personally an LSU right fielder making 27 SEC starts out of the 30 games in right field. It feels like it's more likely it's like a, 15-10-5 split. But that's a long way away. And that's the beauty of the pre-conference is that guys are going to get an opportunity. It would stun me, absolutely stun me, if Ashton Larson, Josh Pearson, or Jake Brown just didn't really play much over the next 5 weeks. It would stun me. I think all of them are going to get some time, whether that's in the starting lineup, whether that's in a midweek game, whether that's in mop-up duty. They're going to get out there. And the question is who hits when they get the opportunity. There may be a high ceiling for Jake Brown. I think there's a high floor for Pearson and Larson. And then what if Derek Curiel really struggles? Or what if Chris Stanfield gets hurt? Or what if you've got a devastating right-handed pitcher on the mound and you say, hey, we need to sit Chris Stanfield for this guy. He's a right-handed hitter. He can come out of center. We'll put Brown in center. We'll throw Pearson in right. There are moving pieces there. So this is not like nailing down your starting right tackle in football where you feel like you're going to put a guy out there and he's going to be your guy. You're not going to rotate right tackles drive by drive more often than not. I think game by game, even inning by inning, you could see these guys in a bit of a hodgepodge. There is an extra spot there at DH. Maybe that goes to a catcher like Aaron Beatty or Hernandez. Maybe that goes to one of these guys who is the odd man out that day in the starting outfield. But again, I don't find this right field position, in my opinion, to be a hole in the lineup. I find this spot in the lineup to be one that has the most questions. I think that's between two guys at catcher, and I think they're both going to play. I think it's one guy at first in Jones. I think it's one guy right now at second in Dickinson. I think it's two guys for two spots on the left side of the infield with Braswell and Milam. I think that you've got Stanfield and Curiel that are going to play, and then you've got questions here that don't really exist anywhere else right now on that roster. But as we know, things change every single day in a baseball season. I'll give these examples next week when we get closer to opening day. But you all know that Chad Jones was the opening day DH for 2009. By the end of the season, he was a pitcher. Y'all know that Jake Brown was a pitcher until a couple weeks before the season last year and ended up being a starting outfielder in the regional for you. Y'all may not remember last year that Javen Coleman started Game 3 of the season. He was your Game 3 starter. Y'all may not remember that the 2023 team, the opening rotation was Paul Skeens, Riley Cooper, and Chase Shores. Ty Floyd wasn't even in that mix. Things happen rapidly, and it's the beauty of the baseball season that twists and winds and ends up where it does. And eventually, by early May, you've kind of got the rotation exactly the way you want, and sometimes it comes together more quickly than that, and sometimes it takes some time. these guys all deserve some at-bats. They've all gotten some at-bats in their time at LSU, and I think that's going to continue. I just think that it's a question mark, not necessarily a huge concern out there in right field. So the entire breakdown that I've got by the written word for this is on LouisianaSports.net. It's Ashton Larson, Eason Fry, Josh Pearson, Jake Brown, Dalton Beck, and I've kind of written how I feel about the whole thing. So if you missed a little bit of this or would rather do it by the written word, you can always find that at LouisianaSports.net. Speaking of LouisianaSports.net, there's a ton up there right now because there's just a lot happening right where we are. Ross Jackson was just over here 5 minutes ago. He's been running around like crazy. He had an opportunity to chat with Kellen Moore last night. He's got a story up on Kellen Moore's answers/non-answers from the Super Bowl media scrub last night. One burning question for the LSU Tigers in their football team in the spring. Chris Marler's got that piece up. I've got my position preview up for right field. Kate Anderson and Chase Shores are named preseason All-Americans by Baseball America. That's up there. And LSU added a local quarterback from U-High to his 2025 signing class. You can check all that out for free over at LouisianaSports.net. We appreciate the folks at LaBerge Baton Rouge for letting us be here on Radio Row all week long. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit of Super Bowl. Kurt Schilling along in about 15 minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. The Hunt Palmer Show, live from Super Bowl 59 Radio Row in New Orleans. Presented by L'Auberge Casino Hotel, Baton Rouge.
Hanging out on Radio Row. I feel like this is going to be probably the quietest 45 minutes of this show for the week because we are... let me ballpark that, 60 feet away from the set of the Pat McAfee show. They are not on location until tomorrow. For anyone who's ever watched that show, they can cut up a little bit, and so I'm imagining that through the next 3 days, it's going to be a little raucous in the middays right behind us. So I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You're going to get the energy, going to get the vibes from that show, kind of lift the spirits, or if it's just going to be a massive distraction because they're cutting up over there. We'll see. I'm excited to just see it. I've got this kind of thought in my head because ESPN Radio is like 25 feet behind me here, and then Pat McAfee is right next door, and obviously they're going to garner some really high-profile guests, and I feel like I'm going to watch a lot of really high-profile guests walk right past me for the next 3 days. I don't know how many of them we'll actually get because they're on a pretty tight schedule, and you just feel like ESPN Baton Rouge might not garner quite the attention that National ESPN Radio and the Pat McAfee Show do. But I feel like I'll see a lot of the guests. I just don't know that we'll get them on the air with us. So we'll see how all that goes over the next couple of days. But we do have a couple of minutes here that won't be completely out of control, like they will be potentially coming up the next couple of days. We're going to talk about this Super Bowl now. Darren Smith from KLKC in Kansas City, good enough to give us a little bit of time here on this Tuesday. I'm sure, Darren, quite a busy man, but I would imagine that the folks that cover the Chiefs and around the Chiefs are probably used to this by now. This is our first time on Radio Row. Y'all do this every January, February, right?
Yes. Well, first of all, my apologies for my timers because I know I was supposed to be on a little bit earlier, and people get to talking. I was actually talking to one of the voices of Chiefs Radio. He's talking to me about stuff, and I'm like, I gotta go. Someplace I gotta be. So I apologize for that.
All good.
And thank you for the time. Yes, it is. This has become commonplace now, but yeah. I got Patrick Mahomes to thank for me personally because there were many years. I've been doing this for about 31 years. I've been, which I don't look at about when I was 15 years old in high school, but I've been applying Radio Raw all this stuff for years and could never get approved. The moment Patrick Mahomes plays in the AFC Championship game 2018, approved, and I've been going back ever since and covering every Super Bowl since. So I'm like, thank you, Patrick. And so I thank him every day. I say, Patrick, I thank you. For what? You don't even need to know, but just thank you.
You know, it's funny because we had a good quarterback in New Orleans for a decade and a half, and Drew Brees.
Yeah.
He got to one of these, and the Chiefs have managed to consistently climb that ladder. And it's not like the AFC is chopped liver. Those quarterbacks they got in that conference are unbelievable. Do you feel like Chiefs fans are appreciative of the factor? Do you think it's kind of they may take it for granted because it just feels like they're going to show up every single week?
Honestly, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
You get those that, because a lot of times in the league, everybody was kind of envious of New England because of their run. No, they won 6, but they've been to 10. But even getting to their championship game, I think they got there like 8 times in a row in the AFC. And so, there is a mix of some who are just kind of arrogant about it, like because you have Patrick, you feel like you're going to be there every year. And basically, based just off of history, the worst that has happened is him getting to this. So I get that part. But also, you have to realize for the Chiefs fans, it took them 50 years since their first Super Bowl victory to the one that they won in 2019. That was a big deal for them. So they know what it's like to go a long period of time. Maybe not like Cleveland or some of these other cities that we don't know too much about. Mm-hmm. But now that you've been, you do kind of. I'm not like even for myself. I expect to at least be in the Final Four each and every year.
Let's talk about this team because the Chiefs burst onto the scene, high flying. Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, they're going all over the place. And this team, from afar, we're watching, and it just looks like, well, look up, there's a score. They won 21-17 this week. They won 24-21 this week. They won 20-14, and it didn't seem like they ran away from anybody. They weren't explosive offensively from afar. They just won every week. Has this felt different, this team?
Yeah, it's interesting. I talked to a couple of players last night on open night, but I've talked about this on our shows back in Kansas City, is that the Chiefs have been getting everybody's best. Now, it's one thing when the Saints won, you're a defending Super Bowl champion and you get everybody's best. Okay, cool. Now you're a 2-time defending Super Bowl champion, so you're everybody's Super Bowl each and every week, especially when you're trying. You said before the ring ceremony, and then, of course, you leave it alone throughout the year. But your record kind of dictates this team is really trying to go for 3 in a row. So you're getting every team's best each and every week. On top of that, not only do you have to be at your peak physically, but you got to be there mentally, and that's draining. So you have players who have Patrick and Travis and Chris Jones and some of those players. They play an additional full season worth of football in the postseason over this last 7-year stretch. So it's a lot of football for them, and the fact that they were able to still compete and win at a high level, both on the mental and physical part, says a lot about Andy Reid and his coaching that he does.
Andy Reid, I believe, announced, I heard in SportsCenter that he will be back next year. Did I hear that correct?
Well, there was never really in the reports that he was leaving.
Right. You never know. Eventually, the Father Time will win out.
Well, it's funny. Mike Florio started that a couple years ago, that this might be Andy Reid, and so everybody asked him every year, and he's like, he just signed a 5-year contract. Essentially, he's not going anywhere. As long as Mahomes is there and he's healthy, he's not going anywhere.
What concerns the Chiefs on Sunday?
Saquon Barkley.
I think that's fair.
It's they're. I don't want to say. I'm giving them the just because they're a good football team. They deserve to be here. They have a great defense. They have a lot of speed defensively. They have a lot of young players. So so I want to grant them that they've been good and consistent most, if not all, of this past season. So they deserve to be here. They're a tough team. They were a tough team that Kansas City, had to come back from behind to beat 2 years ago down in Phoenix. So, this is going to be one of those games where I don't see why I wouldn't go down to the end, and I don't see a blowout on either. If it were to be a blowout, it would have to be Philly blowing out Kansas City with Saquon Barkley just making big chunk runs and Kansas City not being able to respond. But the Chiefs have not really been able to, quote-unquote, blow out a team. That's just not in their MO right now.
I know you kind of bristled at the Andy Reid potentially not coming back. What about Travis Kelce? Is there a chance this is his last game?
No.
No? Okay.
If they were to win, he's coming back to try to four-peat.
Yeah.
Why not? And then also, if they lose, he's going to, want some validity because he's not going to want to go out thinking that people think he's washed. Like his numbers were down this year, but no, I'm going to retire because we lost, and he's not going anywhere.
Let's talk about New Orleans. You said you've been to a lot of these now that the Chiefs have played a lot. How do you feel New Orleans kind of represents itself as a host city?
Ooh, are we live?
We are live. We are live.
So I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little disappointed, and I say that respectfully because all the other cities that I've been to over the last 6-7 years, like the media, the NFL experience, all that stuff has been going on all week. Doesn't seem like it's going to be starting here until like Thursday. So it's
okay.
I tell people, I said maybe just everybody's at work or whatever. It just seemed like this is a strange time that all of a sudden it's not. The people that are even here amongst Radio Row is just media folk. It's not. You don't see fans or anything like that.
Yeah.
So so when I say it's disappointing, I like being around. The regular people. I mean, these are our colleagues, so to speak. But I like
the circus hadn't come to town yet.
So I mean, that's Now, granted, we'll have the media part tonight, so I'm gonna get down on that. But for me, no. I mean, New Orleans had they haven't cheated me. They've been treated well, and the experience has been fine. I just disappointed. I don't see a lot more fans.
We've been talking about this because we're in Baton Rouge, and LSU is kind of our primary. The Saints are certainly there, but LSU is kind of our primary.
I'm jealous too because I was talking to somebody who actually works for CBS and lives in Baton Rouge. Because I cover the Chiefs home on the road and I also cover KU football and basketball,
right.
I don't get a chance to kind of travel. So I do travel covering the Chiefs, but they don't play in New Orleans often. So if they were to play here, I would want to go to a Baton Rouge game the night before because I want to experience the whole swamp, Swamp Valley and stuff. So
for sure, but for us, it's I've done national championship games and they pale in comparison to the spectacle that this looks like. It's just a far, but I'm confident that the party will come to town here in New Orleans and things will ratchet up over the next few. Even though I've never been here for it, I'm confident that that's coming here eventually.
That is true. You get to Thursday and then Friday, it's going to be so. What you see now is going to be wall to wall, elbow to elbow. So you're gonna, it's going to be crazy for you. Now I was just telling my coach, for me, I'm literally going to. I'm declining interviews. People come by and interview because I want to be able to experience this. As long as I've been doing this, I've never been to the NFL experience.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's I want to just breathe. I'm not trying to broadcast from 8 to 5 every day like I've been doing for. No. I'm not doing it.
We'll let you go on that note. You can go ahead.
You're fine. You're fine. No, you're fine.
I only got 30 minutes to go, so we're going to take a timeout. We appreciate your time here. Welcome to New Orleans, and enjoy the football on Sunday.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your time. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
He's Darren Smith, KLKC, up there in Kansas City. All right, we got 30 minutes to go. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we will chat with Kurt Schilling. That is coming up next on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
OTB, AFR, and the Hunt Palmer Show are hitting the road to spend the week on Radio Row, walking you up to Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Our coverage is presented locally by LeBare's Casino Hotel, Baton Rouge. Listen on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge and watch on the 104.5 ESPN YouTube channel.
Yeah, again, Beck said it right there, but we just want to thank LeBare's Baton Rouge for allowing us to do this. T-Bob talked about this earlier today, and I echo his sentiments 100%. This is a cool thing for us to get to do, and clearly, I'm looking around. The Pat McAfee show is going to be here in ESPN Radio National, and Hester's SiriusXM gang is going to be here, and CBS Sports is going to be here. But for LeBare's to step up and for the team at Guarantee Media to allow us the opportunity to be here on Radio Row to experience the biggest American sports spectacle that there is, and to be able to do it for a week is such a thrill, and it's been so cool. We're going to get the opportunity day after day to talk to so many cool people. And I've had a blast today. We started with Sharif, who was just walking around with the microphone and said, "Hey, sit down. We got to talk about the Saints hiring a coach." And we did that, kick off the show. And then Caroline Fenton from Yahoo, who is an LSU Tiger, but has spread her wings and flown out of the little bubble there to Nashville, and is with Yahoo Sports, and so it was great to get to chat college football with her. Had Glenn West step aboard. Darren Smith just sat down with us to talk a little bit of Chiefs. I kind of enjoyed Darren's tone there, quite frankly. That's a guy who is pretty confident that the Chiefs are going to get it done, and I get the sense that's the vibe from just about everybody in Kansas City. They feel like this is just kind of their era, and they're the team that somebody's going to have to knock off, and that's the vibe I got from him just covering the team. And that's probably the thing that turns people off the most on the Chiefs, is that kind of sense that it's their sport at this point. But until somebody beats them, like, you got to feel like that's kind of where they are in the sport. So it was cool to chat with Darren Smith, and we'll be doing that more and more as time goes on. Patrick Peterson is here. He's going to jump on our airwaves at some point. I just saw Michael Brockers walk by, former Tiger grade, who's kind of looking to get into the media side of things. He just walked by the set as well, so he'll be joining our airwaves at some point. There's so many people here, and the sense that I've gotten from the folks that have been to a lot of these is that this is just a baseline Monday and Tuesday, and it's just going to continue to rise. I talked in the last segment about the stuff that's going to be going on behind me for the next 3 days with the Pat McAfee Show and with the ESPN Radio. I'm anxiously anticipating how that's all going to go. I was interested to hear Darren just then talk about being a little bit disappointed in the early goings here with New Orleans, but then he started talking, and it didn't have really much at all to do with the city itself. It had more to do with the fact that the NFL experience wasn't up and running, and that there weren't as many fans that were here. That's going to change. That's just the nature of this. I don't feel like a lot of fans show up for Super Bowl week on Monday or Tuesday. I know personally, I was at my aunt and uncle's house last night, and my cousin took his two kiddos to the fan experience. They live in New Orleans, so you've got some locals that are certainly here that are soaking a few things in, but I think you're going to start to see a lot of red and a lot of green fill this place in the next 48 hours or so, and then we'll get ready to play a little bit of football on Sunday. I personally can tell you that New Orleans has really dressed up for this. I was talking to some folks who were locals here, and I've spent a ton of time in New Orleans in my time living in Baton Rouge, which is almost 20 years now. And we know that the roads aren't always the greatest, and we understand some of the shortcomings that New Orleans may have. But when the country comes to town, and that's what's happening here, you got to put your best foot forward. And I could tell from driving on Poydras Street earlier today, from driving on Canal Street earlier today, they have put a lot of work into making sure that the city presents itself very well. And you're going to get some warm weather, and you've got two huge brand names as far as NFL franchises go. So I feel like New Orleans has put itself in a really good spot here to have a great rest of the week, and we're thrilled to be a part of it here with Radio Row here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. OTB is here every morning. I am here from 1 to 3 every single day, and then Matt will drive you home every day from 3 to 6. He's currently out there kind of roping folks up to see if he can get anybody to sit down with him from 3 to 6. So it's been a ton of fun, and I'm excited to see how things kind of move forward today. It's like the McAfee set. I know I keep talking about the McAfee Show, but it's right here. I feel like I would probably be talking about any of them if they were right next to us, but the fact is that theirs is right here. They have been working on that thing since yesterday morning at like 7 o'clock. There's a lot that goes into to that production. So again, to get a little bit of a view of what that's going to look like will be interesting. If you missed any of our show today, you can always catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. As I mentioned, opened the show with Sharif, had Caroline Fenton, Glenn West. If you're talking LSU, Hunt on LSU is where you can find it. Talking Saints like we did with Sharif, you can find that at Hunt on Saints, wherever you find your podcast. We had a good conversation with Sharif, who was able to spend some time yesterday with Kellen Moore at SEC Media Days, at Super Bowl Team Media Day over there in the Superdome. We've got about 25 minutes of show left, and I certainly want to leave some time for Kurt Schilling. So here's back my executive decision here on what we're going to do. I don't see him in my periphery, but like we just had Darren, who was a little bit late, so I want to give some time for that. I don't want to run this segment and then have a break and then have Kurt Schilling come in, and we have like 4 minutes with him. So what we're going to do is we're going to step aside for a quick timeout here to leave a little time on the back end of the show, and we'll have our conversation with Kurt Schilling when he walks up here in the coming minutes. So let's step aside. We'll take a quick timeout. We'll come back and we'll hear from Kurt Schilling. That's coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, AVSSLA.com is that website. Nothing more important than the safety and security of your home and your family. And for us in the Palmer House, we trust the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions to handle all of that. When we moved, wanted to make sure we had cameras front and back door, wanted to make sure we had the burglar alarm. Mitchell Fisher and his team came over and they set it all up. I now get 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on my app, a live view of my front door and my back door. I can pause, I can rewind, I can zoom in. All of that comes without any cloud storage fees whatsoever. I can arm my burglar alarm remotely. I can disarm it remotely. All the touch of a button right there on the app, and it's all because of the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions. If you are moving or you'd like to get that burglar alarm or security system installed, get those cameras in place at your home or at your business, Audio Video Security Solutions can help you with all of it. Check them out on Instagram, AVSS_BR. Got some great examples of the kind of capabilities they have. Also, you can check them out online at AVSSLA.com. It's Audio Video Security Solutions, AVSSLA.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Winding things down from my perspective on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We are on Radio Row here in New Orleans, getting you ready for Super Bowl 59 between the Chiefs and the Eagles. We're here all week long. Brought to you by LeBear's Hotel and Casino in Lake Charles. An interesting kind of curveball on this whole Super Bowl deal. Never know what exactly is going to happen. Is that the next Saints head coach is here coaching without having taken the job. And everyone knows it, but no one can talk about it on the record until it's finalized next week. We had a brief conversation with Sharif Ishak to start the show, and it was interesting that he talked about the interaction that the New Orleans media had with Kellen Moore last night, and Ross Jackson was there. He's got a great piece up right now on LouisianaSports.net detailing kind of that conversation. And Ross had the same impressions that Sharif did kind of Kellen Moore's answers. Like, it's a tough spot for him to be in. It's one of those deals. Like, I went to journalism school. I get it. Questions need to be asked, and we all understand how that works. But the fact of the matter is, this is not like an injury or anything. Like, this is something that Kellen Moore simply can't talk about. And all the while, the New Orleans media needs to get the soundbite of him talking about it while not talking about it. And he's getting prepared to coach in the biggest game of his life. He's trying to win a Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator. And it's one of those deals where I think if you're Kellen Moore and you've got a degree of maturity about you, that you understand how to compartmentalize it, and you know that you've got to sit in that chair for 90 minutes or an hour or whatever the case may be, and you've got to answer some of these questions without answering them. And you say, well, look, the interview process was awesome, really appreciate it. Yeah, this is a really tough place to play in the Superdome, and, well, yeah, and you just kind of dismiss the more direct questions. And then once you get off the podium, you realize that you go watch tape, and you go to practice, and you go meet with your guys, and you put together a plan to try to go beat one of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the best defense in the NFL, in the Kansas City Chiefs. And then once that's over, you realize that you're probably going to turn right back around and go look for a house here. But at the same time, Kellen Moore's got to, be thinking one way or another about, hey, I got to put together a staff. This is the biggest opportunity of my professional life, and I've got to take the opportunity right now to get started. And it's just an interesting little twist that we here in a local market could not have anticipated. I look at it and I'm like, we could sit here and talk, for 10 hours about how the Eagles block Chris Jones and how the Chiefs block Jalen Carter and what matchup advantages that Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown present on the outside for the Eagles against the Chiefs secondary. And we could do that for 10 hours, but I don't know that it's necessarily the most compelling Baton Rouge radio that we could do. And you never know what kind of local angle could materialize. And guess what? If Jaden Daniels was here, that'd be pretty quick. I could handle that local angle quick, fast, and in a hurry. But he's not. So what's the local angle? Well, all of a sudden, after this coaching search of bump in the road after bump in the road after bump in the road, where, oh, this guy pulled out, oh, this guy's not interested, oh, this guy took a different job, now the guy that everyone is geared in to being the next head coach of the Saints is actually right here in front of us. And I can remember vividly, this is a little bit different because LSU fans would have never watched a Pitt Panthers football game because nobody in Baton Rouge watches the Pitt Panthers play. And a lot of Saints fans do watch the Eagles because they're in the playoffs and they're on prime time, and you get more of an opportunity to be exposed to that. So I think a lot of Saints fans understand what this Eagles offense looks like and what Kellen Moore does. But I vividly remember Pitt playing in a bowl game after LSU had hired Matt Canada, and everybody in Baton Rouge like being locked onto this Pitt bowl game. I don't remember what bowl game it was, but we were looking, look at this motion that LSU's running. This is incredible. This guy's going to be awesome when he comes to Baton Rouge, and he's going to lighten up the boxes for these running backs. And it was just a different angle that we would never have watched the game from. And I'm curious if Saints fans now are going to look at this in this Super Bowl and be like, all right, this is our next head coach. He better be awesome. And I feel like that's the way that some will. In reality, how Kellen Moore handles an offense with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley and Lane Johnson and the talent that he's got at his disposal, and how he handles whatever the Saints put out there in his first year as a head coach, probably not apples to apples. Like, it's just not quite the same thing. But you hope that over the course of time that the Saints front office is able to reassemble this roster toward the top of the NFC like the Saints were for a large period of time, with a lot of the same people still in the room. They got a long way to go to get to that point. We all are very well aware of that. But hopefully Kellen Moore's the coach when that does happen. Then you take what he does in this game pretty seriously. I do think it can only help if the Saints head coach has got a Super Bowl ring to his name, that has been through this experience and had success and kind of knows what that takes, because ultimately that's the goal. But the fact of the matter is that Kellen Moore, when he walks out of the Eagles facility for the last time early next week, no matter if they've won this game or lost this game on Sunday, Kellen Moore walks out of that facility, goes down to New Orleans, walks into the facility on Airline Drive, and immediately inherits a wildly different situation. And y'all are all aware of that. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. You're looking at a Saints roster that is in the opposite shape of what the Eagles are, where the Eagles have got Pro Bowlers and All-Pros all over the place, and the New Orleans Saints don't have a single player on their roster who is a Pro Bowler. You've got J.T. Gray on special teams, and candidly, that ain't going to move the needle. I think there are probably some Saints fans who don't even know who J.T. Gray is. He's a great player for what the Saints do ask him to do, but to not have a single Pro Bowler and to go from the group that I just rattled off all the guys on offense. The defense has Zach Bond, who's an All-Pro. It's got Jalen Carter, who's an All-Pro type player. You've got really good players all over the field for this Eagles team, and you're struggling to make that happen for the New Orleans Saints. So while the angle is interesting from the media perspective, entering, as I mentioned, with last night's media scrum and the story that's up at LouisianaSports.net right now and all of that, and while I think it is interesting to look at the next headman of the Saints and see how he handles himself in this game, all of a sudden the dynamic changes in a big, big way for Kellen Moore once he takes that job and hits that podium sometime next week. So it's you never know where the local storyline's coming, and the Chiefs don't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire anymore, and the Eagles don't have high-profile players that played at LSU. You don't have that we can kind of poke at like we would if Jaden Daniels and the Commanders were here, but you've obviously got an opportunity right now with the next head man of the Saints that's coming in, so that does make things a little bit easier to digest and to cover from our perspective here. We're excited for a jam-packed show tomorrow. Very much looking forward to that. My guy Cade Wassan's been booking guests left and right for our show tomorrow. We're going to have Brian Brzee on tomorrow's show. Very much excited for that. Mitch Holthus is the Chiefs play-by-play man. He's going to join us. Laura Oakman is a sideline reporter for the Eagles. She's going to jump aboard as well. So just a lot of different voices that we'll have a chance to sit down with and to hear from on tomorrow's show. And that's just going to continue all week long. Again, I've said this a few times, but I'll continue to reiterate. I'm told that this just kind of keeps ramping up as time goes and time goes. And I can vouch for that because there are a bunch of these big sets that are around us that don't have any people, they don't have any shows on them today, and so that's something that's going to change here pretty dadgum quickly. Beck, let me go back to you in the studio there. Are y'all lonely this week? How are y'all getting along? How are y'all getting along? A little bit quiet, a little bit more production, or just boring?
Yeah, it's just boring. I mean, There's no other way around it. There's just no one here, so it's pretty boring.
So, make something out of the situation. Have a little bit more fun. Create a little energy.
That's easy for you to say, Hunt.
That's easy for you to say, Hunt. Because I've got 6,000 people here running all over the place?
Yeah.
Is that why?
Yeah.
I will say, here's the downside of the massive event. The downside is that they don't have a lot of, food options for us to eat. I realize that's complaining.
I thought you were going to say
There's not
traffic.
Great free food around. No, the traffic hadn't been really that big an issue. I came in from Baton Rouge mid-morning yesterday, and then I came from actually uptown New Orleans today. So that has not been terrible to this point. Maybe that gets worse over time. The only real food options, they've got this trailer over on the back that Bounty, the paper towel company, is giving out free wings, so you'll use their paper towels. I've had a 5-pack of wings each day for free. And then they've got the next 2 drafts are at Lambeau and Pittsburgh, and they've got food native to that region over there. The Lambeau one is pretty good. They got cheese curds and then these little mini brats. The Pittsburgh one, they got some work to do over the next couple of days, because the first day they had this pickle roll-up that I am not going to eat pickles. And then today they had a cupcake with almonds on it, which is fine, but that's not a delicacy. If your city is bringing an almond cupcake as a delicacy, I feel like you're lacking in the food department. Is that a fair critique of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, they have to be known for something else. I mean, why would you just bring a cupcake? That seems kind of not really a lot of thought into it. All
I know about Pittsburgh food, there's a type of when you have roast beef and it's rare, I think it's called Pittsburgh rare or something. I don't know if that's because they do it that way in Pittsburgh or not. And then the other thing, they got Primanti Brothers that does overstuffed sandwiches, but that's not really that's not something that everyone has. That's just what Primanti Brothers has in Pittsburgh. So I don't know. I'll have to ask my buddy Paul Skeens, who I talked to one time on the radio back in June of 22. We're tight. I'll have to ask him and I'll ask Livy too what they really love up there in Pittsburgh. I'm sure I'll get right back to you once my buddies send me.
Why don't you just take a walk down the street somewhere? There's probably a restaurant within walking distance.
So the convention center is absurdly large, and there are a couple of hotels close, but there's not really a restaurant that close. And I'm trying to write for .net, and then I've got the show, so there's not a lot of time to get out and do stuff. Plus I'm driving back after, so you feel like you're kind of trapped here, and they don't have. There's just too many people to serve everybody lunch. You just can't do it. They can for the national championship game when you got 140 people and you can just shovel out trays of lasagna or whatever. But this is thousands of people. I don't know how you would feed them.
Yeah.
So we media types, we enjoy the free food. That's something that we really enjoy, and it's just a little bit lacking at this point with the free food. So I'll have to work my way around that. Plus, a big complaint here. They're not a sponsor, so I don't have to step in. The Super Bowl is a Pepsi event. I got
Hunt, the Coke Zero connoisseur.
We got to swap that around. Yeah, I'm not digging a Pepsi or a Pepsi Zero, so we're going to have to make some of the necessary adjustments for the last 3 days here. I didn't go home yesterday, so I didn't have a chance to pack, or I was just kind of coming in blind. Now I have the lay of the land. I'll have to make some adjustments for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Sounds good.
All right, I guess that'll do it for a Tuesday edition here of the Hunt Palmer Show. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us. Again, we got a lot to do tomorrow, including Brian Brzee of the Saints, who will get on by. Really good second season in the NFL for him, so excited to chat with Brian Brzee, as well as whoever we may be able to rope up around here on Radio Row. I'm done. Matt's going to drive you home next on After Further Review. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Look, Highland Insurance Group, I so enjoyed my conversation with them back a couple of weeks ago in talking about why clients trust them. And it's because of their expertise in insurance. They told me a story. They told me a couple stories, but some are a little into the weeds. This one's pretty simple to understand. They were talking to a business that's got 5 locations. That general liability policy had $1 million of general liability to cover all 5 locations. The Highland Insurance Group looked at it and said, no, we can put $1 million on each of those locations for the same premium. And they did. So you upped your limit by $4 million for the same premium. That's the kind of thing that they can do for you. They're not a magic bullet to just save 20% on your insurance policy. That's not realistic. But making sure your coverage is in the right place with the right carrier, with the right broker in charge, that's important. Check them out online at highlandig.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group. They're online at highlandig.com.